making a classic, atmospheric, or dare I say, intelligent drum and bass song like you'd hear in 1995, 1996. Now, I took inspiration from the jungle techno series, specifically number 7 that was released in 1995. I'm going to let you guys guess which track specifically I took the inspiration from on that compilation. So let's go ahead and break this puppy down. Now let's look at the drums first, and I have 2 different drums within here. The first is that hot pants break, very classic breakbeat from this era in time, especially in that intelligent drum and bass sound. Now I've shared this in other videos before, but basically what I did is chopped out that breakbeat into a bitwig drum machine. And so I have each hit in 1/8 notes chopped out. So I can re-trigger this however I want within here. And I have a core pattern that I'm playing through in the track here. And so let's hone in on these 8 bars right here. And this is really the core for the drum pattern throughout the full song. So I have these 2 main patterns right here, a variation and then a turnaround, and I'll just let this play through. Something I want to call out here is just that snare drum throughout this full 8-bar phrase here. And you'll notice that snare drum almost acts as like an anchor for the break. And the hot pants break is just such a good roller, but you got to have that anchor that grounds the person in the break and helps set some type of structure around it. And so in this specific break here, I think the snare does a great job of doing that. And if you listen through it again, you just hear it's kind of consistent, rhythmic, and then at the end we have that turnaround with a lot of really fat snare hits within there. And then if we go into processing here and just take a peek, that snare hit is being fed to a reverb send all the way on the far right here, just to create a little more atmosphere and put the sound out there in space. Now there's another piece of the song here too, where we go into a break. And so what you'll see right here is I'm using that velocity on the note hits to kind of create this delay-like effect going into the break. So if I play it in context of the song, right, and that's a great way to do that. You could use a delay, but just creating these very quick notes here and then having the velocity gradually fade down. You can just use like a pin tool here and then just drag across. A great way to get some variation in there. Now, in the middle of the song here, we layer up the hot pants break with the Scotty break. And so same thing, we took this break beat, chopped out the different parts. Nothing special here. We're just layering it on top. And we do have a little bit of a variation at the end here, but this break sounds like so. And then when we layer it up, and then in context of the song, so when that break comes in, it's just very chaotic, very loud, and I think it just lends itself to this type of song quite well. Now let's take a look at some of this percussion here next. And so I'm gonna activate these tracks here. And in a recent video I did, I talked about how a lot of producers used drum kits from Romplers like the JV1080 or the XV5080, Korg Triton, anything of that nature. And these Romplers, while they could do synth sounds, they had drum kits in them. And a lot of these like hi-hat one-shots were used heavily as both a rhythmic and atmospheric element within the song. And so what I did is created 2 tracks with that XV5080 drum kit, sent them through a big delay, and I'll show you some of the patterns I have within here. Look at this first one. And so like the drum break, in this one, we're playing with that velocity. So these hits are coming in on every beat, and we're just gradually decreasing the velocity to kind of create this double fade or delay sound which doubles up with the actual delay because we are feeding this into a distinct delay send here, right? Then we have this pattern here, very similar to that first one, but again, we're just manipulating the velocity on the different hits. And then down here, we have some other hits from that 5080 kit. And so what we're doing here in the arrangement in the beginning is we're playing this first set here, giving it a 1 bar rest for the delay to run through, then triggering the next effects, rest, trigger the next one, so on and so forth. So we're kind of creating this like predictive, percussive, atmospheric element that layers up really nicely in the intro, and then it is playing with the break at certain parts throughout the song. And then I'm going to go ahead and disable both tracks because the Roland Cloud stuff just eats up DSP for some reason. Roland, please fix your shit. All right, let's look at the bass here. This is just a basic 808 kick sample thrown in a Bitwig sampler, a little bit of release. And you'll notice I'm modulating the pitch here with a ADSR envelope. This is a very common technique for early jungle where they would often use like a sine wave from an Akai sampler, and to give it some punch to kick through the mix, they would put a pitch envelope on there. Now an 808 sample is already pretty, without that pitch modulation, it's already pretty boomy and cuts through the mix well. But I just wanted to add that extra oomph and snap to it, especially because I was playing pretty low on the keyboard here. So that's why I added that modulation there. And I think we're applying plus 12 on that, so an octave up, which again, I think helps it cut through the mix here. Put the thing down to mono. And if we go into the MIDI here, we are playing a little bit of a 4-bar loop here. It sounds like this. That's it. Very simple. Just boom and bass cutting through really well. Yeah. All right, let's take a look at the synths here. So what I think is really interesting about a lot of these earlier drum and bass tunes is that they're very heavy on the drums and the bass, right? Imagine that, a drum and bass tune. And when you look at the synths here, you'll notice there's only 3 synth tracks. And we have more drums, percussive, bass, and FX one-shot tracks than we do synths. And I think that illustrates really, how simple these songs can be on the surface and still be quite interesting and groovy. So let's look at this little melody here. And what I'm doing is playing a minor 9 and sending it through a Bitwig arpeggiator. And you'll see I modified the bass rate or the speed of that pattern. It's 8 steps. First note, we transpose it up 12 semitones. In this middle one, we transpose it down -12 semitones. And if I pull up the MIDI here, we're just holding out a D3. Now this sound comes from a Korg Triton, and this comes from my upcoming preset pack here, sneak peek here. It's a collection of combinations. We're up to about 81 combinations, and I'm hoping to get this to 127. Folks, there are a lot of hot, juicy, thick sounds in here. Can't wait to release this, coming soon. Nonetheless, this is an interesting choice for an arpeggiator because it's really very much a pad sound. If I turn off the arpeggiator, and we send it through that arpeggiator, and it just sounds really good. Very early 90s breathy chord sound there. Gorgeous sound. You'll be able to get your hands on it pretty soon. And so we have that ARP in the intro, and then we bring in this little bit of a pad progression here, also playing a minor 9, so a D minor 9 to a C minor 9. And that's just repeating, right, that little lick right there throughout the song. And this is also from the Korg Triton. This preset also comes from my upcoming preset pack. It is just 2 sine waves here. And that is a very common sound you would have heard a lot back then as well, as this kind of woozy sine pad. Then we have a low pass filter on it just to keep it down low. Don't want a lot of high-end content on there. And then what I did was layered up an attack portion from another pad on that initial beat where the pad hits. This is also coming from a Korg Triton. It's the Res Sweep patch right here, also playing a minor 9. And you'll see what I'm doing is I have a high pass on here and I'm modulating it down with this envelope. Super techy mid-90s drum and bass sound there. It's just that slow high pass modulation. And when we stack it up with the pad in context, and then you'll see in the arrangement, I'm just having it trigger every other phrase there, just so we don't overdo it. Could I have baked that into that one patch I made earlier? Yeah, probably. But for some reason, I decided to put it on 2 tracks there. Nonetheless, that's what we have for synth sounds. That's really it. If we pull back on the arrangement, again, as mentioned, you'll see the majority of things are drum, bass, percussion, and one-shots. So let's talk one-shots. Now, one-shots here, I have a few core sounds. And my general approach to placing these in the arrangement was putting them in spots where either phrases, new musical phrases are starting. So, hey, we have 8 bars, or maybe we have 16 bars, then the drums are dropping. When the drums drop, we want to have an FX hit with that drop, right? Or at the end of an 8-bar phrase, we just want to introduce something different in that arrangement to keep it interesting. We'll trigger that sound effect. And so we have a few of them. This one here, that actually came from an XV5080. We just bounce it down to audio. And then we have this next effect here, also from an XV5080. Now I also have some transition effects here, and this one sounds like this. In this one, you'll see starts before the beginning of the next phrase, almost where you would traditionally use a reverse sample. We just want to have some type of effect to carry us into that phrase. And so this example at the beginning here, we have all these effects working together to hit on the beat when those drums come in. Then from here, we have a bunch of different diva vocals. This would have been super common for this time period as well. So, you know, sampling old house tracks, which could have sampled even older funk tracks and whatnot, and then throwing those in a sampler and triggering them, going through a big delay. And so you'll see the diva vocals there, and then we kind of have this demonic vocal down at the bottom here. And then what I did was also copied that and reversed the playback. And you'll see in this breakdown here, what we're doing is triggering the demon vocal, and then immediately after triggering the reverse. Now we can flip back to the mix view here, and I just want to call out a few things here as well. As you'll notice, for the bulk of things, I'm using a send in terms of effects. So, you know, I have a delay for my percussion and FX sounds. I have a delay for my synths, and then a reverb for my drums. And I'm using sends just to kind of mimic an old school setup where, you know, we couldn't have an insert on every single channel because I didn't have 20 reverbs in my studio. And so this is kind of that old school method to get a lot of sounds sharing the same space in terms of effects. I think it helps create a nice cohesive glue. So that's what I tried to do. I did still end up using some inserts everywhere. I just got sloppy, but you know, there was good intention behind that. And then we got our tune. Now, as mentioned at the beginning of this video, if you want access to this project file, so you can come in here and really look at the full arrangement here, maybe swap out some of the sounds on here with your own, check me out on Patreon, where all supporters will get a copy of not just this project file, but all of my previous project files and many more going forward. Have a good one.